I'd like to call the meeting to order and move on to item 2, roll call. Go ahead. Claudia.
Gladly. Good afternoon. Chair Martin,
Here.
Director Millibar,
Here.
and Director Palmer.
Here.
Excellent.
Good. Move on to item 3, approval of the minutes of the April 18th, 2024 Finance Committee meeting minutes. I would entertain a motion
Proof?
by second. Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Right. Chair Martin,
Yes.
Director Millibar,
Yes.
and Director Palmer. Thank you. Meeting minutes approved.
Very good. Moving on to item 4, discussion items. 4A, review fiscal year 2024-2025 budget summary in detail. It's an item that's an informational item and I think our presenter is Mr. Bradner.
Yes, sorry, Chair Martin, just confirming with council. Okay, we do have our detailed version of the draft budget for next fiscal year. You board members heard a lot of this earlier when we provided the high level overview to the board, so I'm not going to repeat all of the information that's on the cover sheet of the memo. If you go to the attachment, you also saw this in the board meeting. So behind that is another level of detail, accomplishing the same thing, providing this side-by-side comparison, but with more detail. And then I do have a presentation, and I'm just going to touch on some of it. And then all of these meeting materials are intended to support your review, and we can follow up at any point that you'd like if you have questions or would like to individually discuss what you see within it. Our objective is to share this information with you now, provide some context, facilitate your review, collect feedback prior to the next meeting on June 6th, so that when we come back at the June 6th Finance Committee meeting, we've got a revised and refined budget that's as close as we would, as close as we can be to a final budget that will position us to adopt that on June 20th. So we've got the meeting today to share a lot of details with you, and then the interim between now and the next meeting, I'm hoping you can take your time to dig into it. We can discuss any questions you might have and hopefully get things to a resolved position by the 6th.
So we will have our June 6th meeting before the budget itself comes to the full board, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yes, the 6th, there is no board meeting. That's just Finance Committee Thursday afternoon, June 6th. So we'll come together, hopefully kind of lock things down, at least deal with anything that still needs to be dealt with. And then that should tee us up for the June 20th board meeting. Okay, so let's, Claudia, go to the PowerPoint real quick. And I'm going to just focus on a few of the items on the front end of the presentation, just show you what the thinking is behind the rest of it. And then I think then we can talk about anything that you'd like to or wrap it up. So go ahead. Oh, I'm going to control it. Okay. So first, just to use this timeline as we have been, there you see us today. We're May 16th. We've had our draft budget to the DCA board presentation, and now in the Finance Committee reviewing the details of the budget and leaving those materials for review by the 6th. So here's the items we just talked about laid out on the timeline. Scope and budget for next fiscal year. Sorry, I moved a little fast. I've got just a couple of new bits of information for you that I'd like to share. Hold on, this thing just isn't cooperating. Ay. Yeah, this thing is not cooperating. Here, I'll switch with you when you're ready. So I just wanted to talk for a minute, and this is a lot of information also that I'll use at the 20th at the board meeting. I think we'll use a lot of the same information, maybe not quite as detailed, but this type of information I think is very useful for the board overall. So in terms of the, as we're almost done with the current fiscal year, it's helpful to reflect back on accomplishments from FY 23-24. Probably first and foremost, it's the support that we provided to DWR in responding to public comments. I think you've heard Carrie summarize this in many other circumstances, close to 7,500 individual public comments. That was an incredible amount of work on their part. We provided a lot of support to help interpret the engineering documentation we provided and get them to the point where they were ready to finalize that document with a preferred alternative. We did complete three field programs, the last summer, last fall, and then the spring program that's actually underway right now. So all of that was within the confines of FY 23-24. A whole lot of cost estimate work, especially this winter, ramping up to the moment we just had earlier, going through all of the details around the preferred project, trying to really dig into and hopefully instill confidence in everyone's understanding of that estimate, what it represents, what its limitations are, but also what, kind of how it also does provide a lot of good, useful information in terms of how to manage going forward, where to focus our energy, and how to manage costs within the program. A lot of related work, the master program schedule is critical to that. And that is one of the most useful tools that we've got at this point for testing those schedule impacts, testing the ability to change cash flow, testing our ability to compact or compress or stretch out cash flow, all the things that I know are ultimately going to be really important questions. So we're going to continue to put a lot of work into that schedule. It's a bit of a beast, as you can imagine. It's a very large, complicated project. And so a detailed schedule is not an easy task, but we have a pretty good working tool at this point, but we've still got quite a bit to do in it. We did a lot of our, in terms of our outreach, closer look videos, fact sheets, videos, translations. I've got things translated into Chinese and Spanish and other languages. So there's been a lot of work on the outreach side. Did 12 alignment tours this current fiscal year. We have 3 more in the works to be done by the end of this fiscal year. And then in terms of our organizational growth, so this is thinking about our systems and processes. We've been working on a lot of new plans, revisions to old plans, SOPs, and then, as I mentioned, one that I think is really important to the health of the organization is really a process audit. We're going through everything, checking our foundation before we continue building. So priorities for next fiscal year: continue providing all of the engineering support to DWR permitting efforts, continue development of our design, construction, contracting innovations, including supporting DWR's evaluation of those innovations, particularly in CEQA, to evaluate possible changes to the approved project. So we're going to continue working very closely, trying to sort through those innovations. You've seen the power of those innovations. That was the 6% reduction in costs that we shared earlier. There's still a lot of opportunity there. So there's a whole bunch of work to do and a lot that can be gained by further studying those. We've got focused subsurface investigations along the Bethany Reservoir alignment. That's really going to help feed those innovations. Those two really go hand in hand. The organizational growth work that I just talked about, and then a lot more of the outreach work that I was just describing. So you saw this budget, 43 million proposed compared to this current year at 40.4. We have opened up some new tasks and phases. I think we've already talked about that. So are there any questions about this piece before I kind of move into a little bit more detail? Okay. Yeah. So I thought this would be a useful side-by-side to just understand where we are in terms of this year versus last year. I think we're starting to build a data set that is useful to understand. So we're going to keep building on this and reflecting in terms of where we're growing, where we're contracting, what's changing, that sort of thing. I think it's helpful to lay it out like this. So we're going to keep expanding this as we work forward. Yes.
So that like, we'll get to it, but I know that Director Milbar asked about the field work versus the geotech. So is this AECom? Are they doing most of the geotech, or are there other companies as well?
AECom is the major contractor. They're the contract holder. Within their contract, they have a number of sub consultants that are supporting them. Kleinfelder being a principal one. They have a number of drilling and laboratory subcontractors. So there's a host of supporting resources within that contract, but they are the major contract holder. And so they show up here as our major vendor. Yeah. Just looking at these side by side, you can see things are pretty consistent. You know, we've got Jacobs, who is our engineering, that's our in-house engineering team. Parsons is our program management office. So you can see costs there, some marginal increases in activities across, you know, in those contracts. Those are the three big contracts that we have: engineering, program management, and geotech. So those are good to look at. Below that, it's you have a question, Gary? Yeah.
As you know, Graham, my question has been from the beginning is, what is behind the number? I can see where you can list FY 24-25 proposed budget from Jacobs, for instance. What did they propose based on? What scope of, I mean, were there discrete action or rather deliverables in their scope of work? And we never get to see that.
So that's, we can absolutely, I mean, I guess that's something we can talk about. We have draft task orders that we develop. So we issue annually task orders to these contractors. So they're pretty tightly constrained in terms of their annual budget and annual scope of work. And then we manage it through the year. So every year now we're developing the scope of work for next fiscal year, which will start July 1. And then once we get to June 30th, the task orders for this year expire. Anything that's not done, we manually move it into the next task order and add the words that actually move that piece of work into the task order. So within that task order, there are the deliverables, there's the tasks, there's the aligned budgets that go along with those tasks.
Seeing Jacob's number down to the nearest $1 tells me it's a pretty detailed proposal.
Yes.
And must be based on a fairly detailed scope of work, so.
That might be something that makes the difference between, say, what gets presented to us as the finance committee and then what gets presented to the full board. Because the finance committee can be much more likely to be going through the nitty gritty.
What it is the finance committee can do if we just see this, so there's more to come, so I guess I should wait and see.
Yeah, and I did jump ahead. So this is included in your packet. So making the connection between the engineering responsibilities on the program, which largely falls within the Jacobs contract. So we show it first in sort of a contractual assignment, and then we shift gears to the role within the organization and then lay out in this format the key activities that are planned for next fiscal year, preparing that preferred project engineering report, then layering in the project definition reports for a couple of key items that are on the critical path. And so that's the access roads on Lower Roberts Island. Those feed tunnel reaches 3 and 4. It's tunnel reach 4 development, and then compensatory mitigation. So those are all items that are on the critical path and are going to start being more of a focus going forward into the next fiscal year. We've still got the innovation studies that we're going to be focusing on, starting to think about how the future arrangements of the program will work, because that Jacobs engineering team ultimately will be part of, well, not necessarily that Jacobs team, but folks in that role would ultimately be transitioned to managing the designers who would be procured for the project. So they're not going to fully design this project. It gets broken up and distributed among all of the various, features for final design. And so, the idea is that the folks who are now working closely within the work ultimately would transition to design management roles that would make sure that the feature designers are designing the project and then constructing the project consistent with the vision of the program. So now they are still the in-house design team, focusing on all of these items, but we're starting to also think about those later transition. And so the design management plans and other considerations are going to start to become more important.
Excellent. Just one more question in this regard. Do each of these entities, do they receive a written request for proposal from you or from the management team?
So we go through what I would, it's a negotiation phase where I have and others on the program have a pretty good idea of what we want to be focusing on for the next year. We're now starting to be able to use the schedule as more of a management tool. That's still, we need to make some more progress on that to get it there, but we're making progress. That will really start to drive a lot of these conversations about what needs to be done and when do you need to start what, a lot of what you're seeing up here though is coming out of the schedule. Those project definition report timelines are coming out of the schedule. So that's telling us, okay, we got to get going on that. So I need you to start developing a scope of work. Then we negotiate our way through that process. So it's a negotiated process.
Across the table kind of a process.
Yeah, it's not a competitive process. They have a master services agreement.
They
Yeah.
ask for a proposal, but you're referring to their proposed budget, so they had to have an understanding of the scope of work to do a proposed budget.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is very much a bottoms up estimate. So we identify the key items. They also come with their own items that they think we ought to be considering. We consider that internally. We vet all of this with DWR. So that's a big part of it too, is they have their fiduciary oversight role, which requires we share the details associated with the proposed budget along with the draft task orders. So they consider that as well, and they put their mark on it, in terms of thinking about priorities and what they think ought to be, done or not done.
President Palmer has a question, but I just want to say, it's not our intent to check your work or to try to manage your, but to understand where these numbers come from, I think, to the best that we can before we can make a recommendation to the full board.
I appreciate that. I would feel the same.
I just had a quick question in terms of this. It would be just, I know this has been quite a week for everybody, and I do understand that. But did this get all this detail? Did that get sent out to us earlier in the week? Did I miss that?
No,
Okay, it would be really good if in the future, we got this a couple of days ahead of the finance committee meeting so that we can actually look at some of these numbers as opposed to just having them wash over us.
I totally understand that. The idea here is not, I'm not asking you to pass judgment on them now. I would like to share them with you, talk you through it, and then at your leisure in the next couple of weeks, let's follow up and talk it through and collect your thoughts. And then hopefully we can be in a position to resolve and reconcile everything at the next finance committee meeting when you've had the time. So
Yeah, because it's a question of like, when I'm looking at the engineering and then I see Jacob's engineering and they're the ones who are doing engineering and then the numbers aren't the same here and I just want to know why, because that's our job.
yeah, you're right. And it does get a little, there's an answer to it, which is Jacobs, although their principal work is engineering, that's not all their work. They do have some staff that are also within the program management office. So the contracts don't exactly line up with the phases. It is kind of an integrated team, but that's an entirely valid question. It's just that the roles don't stick purely to the phase lines.
Yeah, it's just that, just so we can, do the due diligence type of thing, because if a board doesn't, they can get in trouble.
Maybe if it's okay, there's just a couple of front end items and then we'll get to the WBS and decide where to go. So we talked about scope of services. I think we laid out this item already. We were looking at just the comparative to get a sense of where things are going up or down, what's changing. Moving here, so we are starting to look at some metrics. This is something that I do intend to enhance going forward. So we're just starting to work on this, but looking at those top three consultant contracts, the design management contract, the program management office, and the geotech, which if you back up and look at what those three total, we're talking about roughly 36 million of the total 43 million for the proposed year, and last year it would probably be a similar relationship. So really a big chunk of the overall budget. This is a dual plot that shows labor hours. So that's the total labor hours within those contracts. Those are aligning with the left axis, and then the weighted average billing rate aligning with the right. This shows a trend that I think we want to see. This is the right trend. Initially back in FY 21-22, the work was more focused with more of the higher level individuals actually rolling their sleeves up. It was a very focused team. Yeah, very focused team, but very expensive team, who was really drilling in and doing a lot of the work. As the years have gone on, 22, 23, 23, 24, kind of similar slight uptick in terms of the total number of labor hours. But the good news is the folks that we're starting to onboard, it was really more of the supporting role, helping to spread that work a little bit more efficiently and effectively amongst a diverse set of rate classes, so that you can see the weighted average billing rate is dropping. So as we're expanding the team, we're bringing on resources that are more efficient, more cost effective, and we're managing the weighted average billing rate, even as these inflationary problems and other things are happening that are driving rates up. As a total program, we're doing a pretty good job so far of managing those rates. Good. Then we've got the work breakdown structure. And so this does not line perfectly up with the contracts, right? So we've got the program management office, which is that cross-organizational support through, and the PMO will exist as long as the program exists. The program management office will exist. It started at the beginning of the permit planning phase, and it theoretically would continue all the way through design, construction, and commissioning. The program initiation phase, which is where all of the initial engineering work and the initial geotechnical work to support DWR's planning efforts, that's performed within program initiation. What we have happening now is the geotech work is splitting off and is going to start getting accounted for within the program delivery phase. But we're going to continue to do the initial engineering work with the in-house capabilities through that program initiation phase. We're still not to the point where we're procuring feature designers. We're not to the point where we're really starting to shift. When we do, those feature designers would show up under the program delivery phase, and the management of those activities would start showing up in the program management office. So over time, program initiation will disappear. Really, once we get past all the major permitting processes, program initiation disappears. All the work will then be within the program management office and the program delivery phase. Okay, so yeah, but the little bit of the confusion, I suppose, is that the work breakdown structure does not align with contracts. It's very much an integrated team. So you've got resources crisscrossing through these phases. So it becomes a little bit challenging to reconcile the contract quantities with the individual pieces of the work breakdown structure. And I think that's what you were trying to do. But that's, that does create a bit of a challenge to reconcile those. So then the presentation just goes through the various sections of the work breakdown structure at a pretty detailed level, shows you the approved budget for FY 23-24, compares that with the proposed budget for next fiscal year. You can see various task orders within that. There's a lot of information within this, but also summarizes for you the key activities associated with the work. So this is the rest of the deck is just working through. So if I back up and show you what this is. So you see for each one of these blocks, so the top you see on the purple of the work breakdown structure, there's the program management office, and then there's the executive office, and that's a block of activities. So then the next slide takes that block and blows it out with more detail. So now it's the PMO executive office with a lot more detail and comparing last year to this year. And so then it works its way through each one of those blocks. But that sheet with the work breakdown structure is like a key, a legend for you to see how these things are working their way through. They're too small. Well. I've got mine all already. Some of them are kind of tiny. Yeah, especially, oof,
Got them on, if we got them like electronically, we could blow it up.
yeah. Key sheet's tough, and we could give you, how about we send you some 11 by 17 PDFs and because that key sheet actually works better when you've got more space to spread it out. It doesn't format well in this landscape thing, so either way, whatever you'd like, we can share. So we can provide you more usable exhibits if that would help you. Okay. Sure. So it just works its way all the way through that work breakdown structure. Each block at a time is dedicated to a slide, and that's it. The cost.
General.
Okay, good.
Good. Okay, got it.
That flows good.
We'll see a couple where we started combining a few where standalone, they didn't make sense to dedicate a whole piece to them. So we started just kind of grabbing a couple, but for the most part, that's how it's structured.
Oh, there it is. I can read it here. Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
So I think with that, I'm happy to just answer more questions as you noodle through it, but at any point, I mean, I think Chair Martin, that's probably as much as I was going to present for now, unless you want to have other questions to talk through.
I like the fact, for instance, the program control sheet, you're listing task orders for each, for whoever's working on this. I like that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing that when we have our June sixth meeting, we can have done our homework and gone through this, and this will be pretty much all the same stuff that we'll be going through on June sixth.
Yes, it will. If we have any updates, we'll share it with you then too. And, we have received the feedback from DWR on the draft numbers. So those have been incorporated into this. So I don't expect any revisions from that channel. But as we continue to work on things and kind of tweak and sort of shift, the numbers could shift a little bit. And so that's another thing we'll do on the 6th is bring you up to speed on any evolutions that have occurred, but I don't
Yeah,
expect
and
it
if
to
you
be
send it to
major.
us like ahead of time on, so when you get them. And, for me electronically, just because then I can tweak it and look at it and make it big and, with my.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll do that. I'm just speaking from experience. I expect the numbers, there could be minor changes as we just cleaning things up. Maybe there's rate changes here and there and different things, but I don't expect any significant changes at this point. Okay, great.
Like the scope is summarized. The breakdown is shown. I think we're good shape.
Okay,
Stuff that will get presented to the board as a whole will be more in terms of, more generalized stuff. I mean, how are you gonna translate that?
I'm sorry. Could you
How are you
repeat that?
gonna translate like stuff in terms of what comes to the finance committee and what gets to the full board?
So this,
Oh, my intention is to present at a somewhat higher level to the board, but I think for board adoption, it'd probably be somewhere in between what we presented today to the main board and what you're seeing right here. It'll be something in between to give, I think, enough detail and context for the whole board to understand, but then they will obviously rely on you as the committee, having done a little bit deeper work into it to make your recommendation.
does that conclude your presentation of item 4A?
It does, yes.
We have any public comment?
Chair Martin, we do not have any public comment requests.
We lost most people too.
Surprised there's anybody left back there.
There was a little cluster and they kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. It does.
Additional questions from the committee? Okay, then we are complete with item 4. We can move to item 5, reports and announcements. Verbal reports, if any. Are there any verbal reports tonight from the committee? Not from
Oh,
staff?
I'm going to Antarctica.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Sorry,
When
that's
is-
my verbal report. Because it'll be sea level rise if the stuff, and therefore we will be affected with the Delta conveyance because of sea level rise and increased salinity into the, yes, okay, that's the tie-in,
Going.
March.
Have an item 6 for public comment on things that aren't on the agenda. Do we have any public comment?
Chair Martin, we do not.
7, adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Claudia. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
committee.